Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me. Actually, this is my first time in Mexico, and I'm having like a wonderful time. And have to say, I've been struck by how friendly this group has been. You guys have a terrific community here. And now I would like to torture you for 40 minutes. The talk that I would like to, that I have for today is a talk that deals with cooperation and cheating. To get things started, um, I would like to start with not a very controversial claim by any means, which is the fact that cheaters do not have a very good reputation, right? And there's a good reason for that. Let me see if I get this right. Yeah, because typically cheaters are defined as individuals that they get all the benefits produced by cooperators, but they do not pay for the full costs required to produce that benefit, right? So it's not that surprising that cheaters do not have a very good reputation. And giving this definition of cheating, what you would expect is a situation in which if you have a, and this is what I try to draw here. So if you start with a population of cooperators, don't ask me why cooperators have to be blue. But if you start with a population of cooperators and a cheater shows up, what you would expect is that the cheaters would increase in frequency over time. And the reason for that is simply because there is an incentive to be a cheater, right? Because again, a cheater is an individual that is going to get all the benefits without paying for the costs. So some of you are probably familiar with the literature on cooperation, and you probably noticed what I've just described is a key issue in the literature about cooperation, which is what is often called the problem of cooperation. All right. So this is a key issue in the literature on cooperation, and essentially, what you're trying to answer um, is uh, is exactly the question that I have here, which is how can a group of cooperators defend themselves against cheaters, right? Um, so I have to say this is I mean, it's as good as a problem can get, right? It's a problem that is relevant for different disciplines, right? It's relevant for psychology, it's relevant for political science, other social sciences, economics, and even like biology, right? Um, so, and another interesting feature is that it has been extremely fruitful, right? In the last few decades, a lot of good work has been produced by authors that try to tackle this problem, right? And what I have in mind here are things like kinship, reciprocity, collective intentionality. And of course, for each one of these mechanisms, there is a whole bunch of literature associated with each one of these topics. So this is a great problem, very general, important for different disciplines, and it also has been very fruitful. But I have to say, from time to time, I there was something that would bug me about this problem, right? And that is, in a lot of discussions about this problem, it seems that the authors would have the implicit assumption that cooperators they are valuable assets, and the cheaters, well, they are not welcome, right? And this kind of bothered me, and then I thought was maybe I don't know, maybe cooperation maybe is not always beneficial. So the question that that kind of I became interested in was well, are there like circumstances in which actually cooperation can be harmful for the group? Um, so uh, what I did was, if you do like me and search for relevant literature, you're gonna find evidence that suggests that cooperation can be harmful in different fields. In psychology, there is a literature about pathological altruism, right? In economics, you have the idea that, for instance, if you have too much cooperation, you can hinder innovation. And as you know, innovation is something that is very important for economists. Um, in evolutionary biology, you have these ideas floating around in different places. Oh, here's one cool hypothesis that I like in evolutionary biology is this one that basically says that for multicellular life to evolve from single-celled life, cheaters were required to allow that transition to happen. This is just like I think it's like a very interesting hypothesis. And taking all together, it seems to suggest that this question, it's not silly after all, right? There seems to be at least some evidence that suggests that cooperation can be harmful. So this was very comforting, right, for me. I don't know about you, but it's always nice to find literature that actually suggests that your question was not that silly to begin with, right? So I was very happy with that, right? But then I start having a different type of crisis, right? And the problem that that started bugging me was um, the way that the authors define social interactions are very different depending which author you're dealing with, right? One notable challenge comes, for instance, is when you define altruism. When you define altruism in psychology, you typically define altruism in terms of cognitive states like intentions, desires, right? And when you move to evolutionary biology, altruism is defined in terms of fitness outcomes, right? So how that behavior affect your reproductive output. So these are very different ways of defining altruism, but the same applies to how other types of social interactions are defined in this literature. Um, at this point, you might be asking, yeah, why should I care, right? Why should I care about the fact that the authors define these social interactions differently? I believe this is relevant because if the different studies are defining things differently, it becomes very difficult to have a good understanding of what the costs of cooperation are and how general those results are, right? Um, and that is basically what I would like to do today. So basically, what I would like to do today, so here's the plan. I would like to look at some literature that suggests that cooperation can be harmful. And what I would like to do is look at each one of those examples, see how they define the social interactions, and in that way, see if there is any costs associated with cooperation. Okay, so that's the plan. Of course, I had to make some decisions about what I was going to focus on. So the three scenarios that I'm going to talk to you today is the first one is pathological altruism that I mentioned earlier. Um, and the other two, so the first one is basically deals with human cooperation. The other two, they deal with evolutionary biology. So not just humans, but also cooperation in other organisms. So the second one is what I call over cooperation problem. And the third one is what I call reserve labor force. Just a little observation. Pathological altruism is a technical term. The other two expressions, I just made it up, right? These are just expressions that I came up with that I thought it would describe those circumstances. So, just a warning. I'm just gonna walk all the way over here to get my water. Okay, so that's the plan. So let's see how. So let's start with pathological altruism. Okay, so hopefully you have a general idea what the plan is. So with pathological altruism, this is a very interesting literature. I don't know some of you are familiar with. So the key uh, the definition of altruism, I should say, is basically that you have altruistic behavior. You know, when the actors they have they have the interest or the desire to improve the welfare of others, right? So that's the definition. It's a common definition that you see in psychology, um, and a case of pathological altruism is essentially a kind of situation in which you have an altruistic behavior, but what happens is uh, it's a situation in which the actor has a desire to improve the welfare of others, but some harm is produced by the action. Okay, so so just to give you an example of what that is. So here I listed some examples. One standard example of this is like something like codependency, right? Just to give you a very simple example, suppose, for instance, that you have a mother that she's really interested in, she really wants to help her son, right? And her son has some unhealthy habits. I don't know, like some drug abuse issue, right? And what happens is she really wants to help her son, and she provides she provides him with cash or some kind of financial assistance that enables his behavior, right? That would be, that would be an example of pathological altruism, right? For people working on this literature. Um, but there's a little wrinkle I would like to draw your attention to here. I don't know if you noticed, but when I talk about harm, I see foreseeable, right? Right. So there's a good reason for that, right? And there's an interesting nuance here that I would like to draw your attention to, and that is this. I will show you this slide, and then I will explain to you. The key idea, and this is not something that I'm saying that you can get this from the discussion about pathological altruism. So the idea here is that the distinction between pathological and non-pathological altruism has to be made by a reasonable observer, and I put the square quotes here, right? Because it's not obvious what that is. The idea here is basically this. Here's an example that hopefully will help illustrate what's going on here. Suppose that you have a doctor, for instance, that really tries to help her patient, and the doctor is a very competent, does everything that he can do, and life is not fair. The patient dies, right? That is not the case of pathological altruism, right? For you to have pathological altruism, what you need is a situation like this. Suppose now that you have the same doctor, but she's very stubborn, right? She, her colleagues try to tell her first, hey, this treatment is not very good. We have empirical evidence that this treatment is actually going to be harmful for her patient. And she really wants to help her patient, and she's just ignores any evidence to the contrary, right? She ignores the papers that suggest that the treatment is bad, harmful for the patient, and she just, she's so, she's still very interested in helping her patient, but she just ignores any evidence to the contrary, right? That's what the foreseeable harm here is doing, right? It's not just harm; it has to be something that is foreseeable for an external or reasonable observer. Okay.
That harm is only about the other one, or can be also
Both. Yeah. No, that's a good question. Actually, it can be for the actor, can be for the recipient, or it can be for other people as well, right? Like the cases of like codependency, you probably have all three of them. Yeah. But you don't have to have, to your point, you don't have to have all three. You can have, maybe just one of them, maybe just the actor, right? Maybe you can be in an abusive relationship, for instance, right? That would be a case. That could be a case of pathological altruism. Yeah, no, thank you for mentioning this. This is important. So here's the so before I show this, so here's the point that I would like to get from this. There seems to be a close connection between pathological altruism and cognitive bias. Then, right? What they're getting at is that for you to have pathological altruism, the actor has to have some cognitive bias that prevents the actor from predicting the harm, right? So, so here's a short way of trying to capture what's going on here: is that when you have pathological altruism, it is as if the actors have illusions of helping. Like in the case of the doctor that I was mentioning to you, the idea is the doctor has good intentions, and the doctor is just, the doctor really thinks that she's helping her patient, but actually, in fact, she's not. So there's a close connection between pathological altruism and cognitive biases. Um, the one of the Probably one important bias when it comes to pathological altruism is self-deception, right? What I mean by self-deception is that you're not just deceiving others. If I'm lying to you, I'm trying to deceive you. But self-deception is more than that. Self-deception involves you deceiving yourself, right? So probably this is going to be relevant, right, for pathological altruism. So because what is going to happen is this is a kind of a cognitive bias in which you really think that you're helping the person, but actually you're confabulating your motivation, you're fabricating your motivation, you're actually harming the other person. You might be, at this point, you might be wondering, why is it that I'm zooming in into self-deception? Um, the reason I'm mentioning this is to highlight another wrinkle in the notion of pathological altruism, and that is this: that you can have a behavior that is classified as pathological altruism, even if it is not directly caused by altruistic motives, right? Because the idea of the situation that you have in self-deception there is that the actor the actor perceives himself or herself as having an altruistic motive. But actually, the actor is doing the action maybe because he or she feels guilty or is actually has a desire to control, right? Actually, is a selfish motive that is driving the behavior. The actor simply has the perception that he or she is being altruistic. I don't know if that makes sense. Okay, awesome. This is an important wrinkle because he is the issue. I don't know if some of you maybe see where that is going, but the problem is typically when you define psychological altruism, right, you typically assume that that behavior is being caused by altruistic motives. And so if you look in the literature, that's exactly the kind of a concern that people have, right? So there is some people, the reaction that they have about pathological altruism is to say, hey, this is not really pathological, this is not really altruism. So this is just an example that I I took from one of the papers discussing it. Actually, the title of the paper, it's a book chapter actually, is pathological altruism, right? And what he's putting pressure on is like, is this really a case of altruism? Um, and then this is what he says. There are altruistic intentions. Uh, in the context of if you read the chapter, what he's highlighting is he's not denying that people have altruistic intentions, right? His point is, but if you can have altruism without being motivated by altruism, as he says, altruism at that level is going to be shallow. So it seems what he's getting at is the if you don't have the requirement that altruism has to be caused by altruistic motives, the kind of altruism that you have there is not very, it's not of an interesting kind, right? And other authors have pushed, have criticized the literature on pathological altruism on the same ground. Okay, so it's like, yeah, it's altruism in a not very interesting way, right? I don't know if you. So, okay,
Sorry, maybe it's a language issue.
that
It might not even be altruism at all, just you don't have another word for it.
right. Actually, on that point, so here's what I think, maybe related to your point, I believe, is this. Here's my take on this. I think they're talking past each other, right? So I do think there is a definitional issue, right? So let me say a couple of things about this, and of course I'm be curious what you guys think about this. So this is a quote from um, uh, Barbara Oakley. So she's one of the authors that has been working on pathological altruism. So um, so here's basically what she's. This is a not that long of a quote. She says something along the lines of part of the reason, So she's saying why she thinks that people have such a resistance to be discussing pathological altruism, right? And basically, her point here is
Can you read it? Because I'm getting
getting confused
Okay.
listening to you and trying to eat.
Thank you for letting me know. Actually, I was debating about that, and I'm glad that you mentioned it. Yeah, no, thank you. So so part of the reason that pathologies of altruism have not been studied extensively or integrated into the public discourse appears to be fear that such knowledge might be used to discount the importance of altruism. As psychologist Jonathan Haidt notes, morality binds and blinds, right? Um, so this is a point that she's talking. I mean, she of course here she's talking about the state of the literature on altruism, and of course I'll be curious to hear what you're saying. But here's my take on this. I think that what Barbara Oakley and others working on pathological altruism are interested in, they are not interested in the origins of the behavior. What they are interested in is the potential harm caused by those behaviors, right? So they're interested in the outcomes of that behavior, right? Here's a maybe another um, point that might help illustrate what I have in mind. If you look at the examples that people working on pathological altruism are mainly interested in, like codependency, empathic burnout, they're not asking the question of what is the origin of that behavior. They're interested in understanding the harm that is produced by that behavior. Let me give you another. So here's another slide that I tried to um, um, uh, I try to describe what my what I think to be going on here, which is related, I think, to your point, which you know maybe you don't agree with me, but I agree with you in the sense that it's a definitional issue here, and what are you trying to do with those definitions? So if you're trying to explain the origin of the behavior, maybe you might think that defining altruism without assuming that that behavior is caused by altruistic motive is not going to be very useful, right? However, my sense is that if you're like a lot of the people working on pathological altruism and they're trying to understand the consequences of that behavior, the fact that altruism is not being caused by altruistic motive, it becomes irrelevant, right? So the general idea here is uh, if you're what is the right definition depends what you want to do, right? If you want to focus on the outcomes, I don't see any problems with the definition of altruism that is being used here. So where does that take us? Um, so oops. So so the idea here is like circling back to the main question. Um, when is cooperation harmful? Well, um, so for you to get the result that cooperation is harmful from the literature about pathological altruism, you have to have this permissive definition of altruism that you allow something to be labeled as altruism without being caused by altruistic motives. Is that a problem? Well, it depends what you're trying to explain. If you're trying to explain the origin of altruistic behavior, you probably don't want to go that way. But if you're interested in understanding how or bias towards altruism can produce harmful outcomes, I think that's a perfectly fine definition. And the kind of cost that you get then is a cost that has to do with a bias towards thinking that altruism is tends to be beneficial. Okay, so that's the first case. Okay, awesome. Okay, so let me switch now to a second case. Okay, so that's basically what I wanted to say about pathological altruism. And now let me move to the second problem, second type of case. This is what I call over cooperation problem. Let me just oh, so this is an example now, not just of human cooperation, but cooperation in different species as well. So now we're going to have to switch gears and change what we understand by cooperation here. Now, cooperation is going to be defined not in terms of cognitive states, right? But it's going to be defined in terms of fitness. So cooperation here is going to be a behavior that provides a fitness benefit to others. Okay. Free riding, which is going to be our cheater, is going to be a behavior that, similar to what we were talking earlier, it reaps the benefits, the fitness benefits, I should say, from cooperators without paying the fitness costs. Okay, so we're not talking about psychological states anymore here. Okay, good. So those are going to be the key definitions we're going to be using for now. Um, um, so so here's the I think what is the interesting possibility that this case highlights. In a way, um, you would expect groups to fall apart if they don't have enough cooperators, right? And there's a good reason for that. Cooperators, they produce a lot of the benefits for the group: foraging, raising the young, protection against enemies. So you would expect. That's why hopefully my slide is not very confusing. But what I'm trying to say here is that if you have a group that has only free riders, that group is not going to work very well. It's better to have a group that only has cooperators, okay? Because you're going to get all these benefits that the cooperators produce. Okay, here's the question, right? Can you maybe maybe you can have a group that have maybe a group of both cooperators and free riders. They can do better than the group that has only cooperators. Okay, so the idea here is basically this. Of course, only having free riders, that is bad because you don't get the group benefits. But at the same time, maybe what might happen in certain circumstances is that you kind of have a sweet spot, right? You don't want to have only free riders, right? But if you have the right amount of free riding, actually, this mixed group can do better than this one. Okay. Hopefully, this makes sense. So that's the possibility that I would like to consider with you. Um, Luckily, there's an interesting study that I would like to talk a little bit about it that suggests that this might happen, right? And it also suggests how this might happen. So let me walk over. My drawings are fantastic. So let me explain a little bit what's going on here. So this was a paper that has been published like over 10 years ago, PLOS. So this is an example that involves yeast. And you might be wondering, it's like, wow, wait a second. Why are you talking about yeast? I mean, one of the interesting things about yeast is because it's a very simple system. So you can see this as a minimal model for understanding when cooperation can be harmful, right? And of course, needless to say, when you're dealing with humans, things are much more complex. So those simpler systems they're good at sharpening your intuitions about this issue. So let me walk over what's going on here. So the idea here is that this is a cell. It's obvious, right? So basically what happens is they produce an enzyme, right? This enzyme is released into the environment, and what it does is it breaks down sugar in the environment, and so that the results here, they, they like quite a bit. Okay, so more specifically, here's what's going on here. So the yeast cells, they produce this invertase, and this, I mean, you don't have to memorize the name of the enzyme. I would just refer to it as the enzyme. The key issue here is that it is a cooperative trait, right? It is a cooperative trait because when you produce the enzyme, you are benefiting the neighbors. Because what happens is that, so the cells, they are like, they're close to each other. So when a cell produces the enzyme, that enzyme is going to break the sugar and it's going to benefit the neighbors, right? What this allows to happen is that you can have a free rider. So a free rider in this case would be a cell that hangs out there, does not produce invertase, and it gets all the benefits from the producers, right? So they just they're just living the life, right? So the thing that maybe I forgot to mention that is relevant here is that producing invertase is metabolically costly for the cell. Okay, so the free riders, they're just living large, right? So So what happens is, though, and you can tell from the title of this paper, is that what happens is what the people who were running this experiment when they were growing the yeast populations, they were expecting the populations that only had cooperators to be the largest population. And what they found was not exactly the opposite, but it was a different situation, right? Which was the population that actually had a mix of cheaters or free riders and cooperators. They were the biggest population. They were the largest population, which is kind of surprising, right? Because why on earth would free riders benefit a population, right? So, and that's the, I mean, that's the, I mean, you can see this in the title of the paper, although it's very small, but that's basically what's going on in the paper. So let me, of course, there's a lot going on here, but let me just say a couple of things that helps understand what might be going on here. Let's see. Oh, no, I think I'm going the opposite way, am I? Nope, nope, nope. I think it gave up on me. Oh. Too much invertase. Oh no, I messed up. Oh, okay. So is it? Oh, nope. I'm going the other way. Sorry. I should probably stop for a moment. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, please help me. Yeah. So just go back. Okay, you're here? Sorry about that. Okay, so right here. Okay. No, that's good, but it's not showing that. Oh, now it is. Oh, I think there's a delay. I'll say. Okay, so let me say what. Sorry about that. I'm a little. I was a. So what is basically going on here is this. Let me see if I have to. Oh, he's been late. Okay. So here's basically what's going on here. So hopefully you remember what's going on here. So they found that the mixed population of free riders and cooperators were the populations that did the best, which is very surprising because you would expect a population that only has cooperators to, to be the one that is that would fare better. So the free riders are selfish, right? In the sense that what they do is this: they remember producing the enzyme is costly for the cell. So what they do is, well, they don't have to spend energy for producing the enzyme. So what they do is, they allocate resources for reproducing, right? Nothing very fancy there. But here's where the plot thickens. See. Oh, here we go. I just have to wait a little bit, I guess. So the idea here is that so here's the interesting thing. There are a lot of things going on in this example, but I would like to highlight this one. So what happens is, this is really cool. What happens is that the free riders, actually, by pursuing their self-interest, they're indirectly contributing to the growth of the whole population, right? I don't know if you see what's going on here, because what happens is they're not producing invertase, so they're just taking care of reproducing themselves because now they have more resources to reproduce. So what happens is they are indirectly benefiting the group, even though they are free riders, right?
More simply, the total amount of cost is reduced.
Right.
If you think at the group level now, is that legitimate at the group level?
Yeah. So that's actually what the way that I like to think about this is basically what is happening is when you have mixed of cooperators and free riders, you're reducing, you're making the group more efficient. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And actually, the way that you kind of guess what I was going to go for this. No, you're good. No, this is good. So that means that I feel that people following it. So let me see. Wait. No, that's good. That's it. It's like. Okay, so actually, I'm mentioning this because I think a good way of understanding what's going on here, and I think that's related to your point, is that essentially what is happening here, when you have a group that's highly cooperative, it is as if the opportunity costs are higher. Oh, already? Oh, shoot. Okay. So let me just, I think you guys get the point. So here's the basic idea. So you guys are probably familiar with the notion of opportunity costs, right? Which is essentially this idea that, I don't know, if you're deciding between, like, I don't know, buying a bicycle or getting married, right? Depending which choice you choose. uh, okay, good. You got it. So depending on the decision that you make, you're gonna sacrifice the benefits. If you buy a bicycle, you're gonna sacrifice the benefits that you would get if you got married, right? And vice versa, right? Okay, uh, very difficult decisions. Yeah, I know. So the idea here is, and you guessed it, right? I think that's what you were getting at, right? That essentially what you have is that when you have a group that is highly cooperative, it is as if you are, you're neglecting other tasks, right? So you're reducing the efficiency of the group, right? Um, Let me do this. So I have, how many minutes do I have? Like 4. So let me do this. I was gonna deal with this question, because one question I might have is, well, if free riders, the increasing the group efficiency, is that really free riding? I will skip ahead because I would like to talk about the last case. And if you guys find this question interesting, we can discuss in the Q&A, because I would like to hear what you guys think. So the third case, very quickly, is what I call reserve labor force. So I will mention it very quickly. But hopefully you get the general idea, and then we can discuss more during the Q&A. So here's the phenomenon that is very interesting. Biologists, I feel like what is cool about biology is that I don't have to worry about formulating thought experiments. Uh, so there are a lot of very cool examples. So this is one of them. So this is a phenomenon that happens in a lot of biological systems, and that is something that is called redundancy. So this happens in social insects. The one that I have here is our ants. So essentially, what happens is this. Very quickly. So that's some of the population. They are comprised of individuals that are inactive. So they just hang out there, right? So that's why I have the Z's here. It is as if they're sleeping. That was the best I could think of. So when I was making these slides, so how can I capture this? So sometimes they're called lazy ants, right? So let me see if so very quickly, what is going on here is this. So there's a wrinkle here, and that is this. These guys are inactive, but they can spring into action depending on the cue. So a hypothesis that people often make is that what is going on here is that these inactive individuals, they provide a reserve labor force. So what is going on here is this. As you know, Mother Nature is not kind, right? Bad things can happen. You can have like a bout of bad weather. A predator can show up out of the blue, right? And as you know, predicting the future is a tough business. So the underlying intuition behind this hypothesis is that essentially what redundancy does is that instead of playing the game of predicting what is going to happen in the future, what you do is you create a buffer so that if something unpredictable, bad happens, that reserve labor force is going to provide you with a buffer. Right? So that's essentially what's going on here. Uh, Oh, we have buffer time. Oh, okay. Oh, this is like awesome. Okay, thank you. So let's do this. So to tie it with social interactions, here's basically what is going on here. So you have the active individuals. So they are, they are the ones that are, they're risking themselves. If you're foraging, for instance, if you're, an you're foraging, there are a lot of risks that you're taking. And the inactive individuals, they're kind of like they get the benefits provided by the active members, but they don't pay exactly the same costs. And probably you see where I'm going with this, which is this. In a way, what's going on here is that there's a tension between the inactive and the active members, right? So essentially, what is going on here is that you can think that during the periods of inactivity, essentially the inactive members, they're essentially free riders, right? Because they're hanging out in the group, they get the benefits, but they're not paying for equivalent costs. Okay. Um, this is interesting, I think, is because whereas the case that I was mentioning earlier, the one about the East, was focusing on efficiency, right? Like you put it earlier, this one is about long-term persistence, right? Anyway, so there is I guess what I'm trying to say is that um, they kind of complement each other in this way.
But is it always the same answer to Lisa? They take turns.
So that's the thing. So there are a lot of things here that I'm not saying, right? One of the things that is very interesting is that the free riders, they're not, or the inactive individuals, if you will, they are not all created equal in the sense that they have different thresholds that cause them to go into action. And to your point, I mean, related to your point, and that's I think is very cool, right? Is this imagine, so the standard example that you have, for instance, like bumblebees, they fan, right? So some bumblebees they start fanning at different temperatures, right? So they have different thresholds. So what is interesting here is that the propensity to free ride is varies. So it's like I'm calling them free riders, but there is a interesting subtlety here that I'm kind of hiding, right? Uh, right. So yeah. So what happens is but here's the thing that is cool about this is that because you have the propensity to free ride is different. It is better for the group for the following reason. If you have the bumblebees, for instance, to mention a simple example, so different bumblebees they start fanning at different temperatures. If everyone would fan at the same temperature, that would be really bad because it couldn't adjust to the load. But now, if you have the free riders that have the propensity to free ride at different at different thresholds, the group can adjust to the load, right? I don't know if that makes sense. And yeah. No, yeah, no, that's something that I think that is very neat about this. So I'm glad that you guys mentioned this because sometimes when I give a talk, I don't know what people are gonna find interesting or boring, so I removed it. Actually, I had slides on that, and but yeah. So let me do this. Good. Okay. So let me do this. Let me just wrap things up here because I would like to hear what you guys think about this, and I would like to hear your questions. I will skip this, and I would just like to say this. So these are the three cases that we talked about, and basically you got the idea, the general idea. Try to go to each one of those cases and try to see if there's any validity to the idea that cooperation can be harmful, and sometimes cheaters actually can be the good guys, right? Okay, so let me stop here. Thank you.